The stars had always seemed peaceful to humanity. For thousands of years, people looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. They built telescopes and sent radio signals into the void. They dreamed of meeting other intelligent life forms who might share knowledge and friendship. They never imagined what was actually out there, watching them. The Velthrani Dominion had ruled this part of the galaxy for over 50,000 years. They were tall beings, standing nearly 3 meters high, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow faintly in darkness. Their eyes were large and completely black, like pools of ink that reflected no light. They had 4 arms, each ending in 6 delicate fingers that could manipulate the most complex machinery with ease. But their most important feature was invisible. Every Velthrani possessed what they called the inner voice, a psychic ability that let them communicate without speaking, move objects with their minds, and sense the emotions of other beings. To them, this power was the mark of a truly advanced species. Any creature without it was considered primitive, barely more than an animal. The Dominion had catalogued over 10,000 species across the stars. They had a system for ranking them, a way of deciding which ones deserved freedom and which ones would serve as slaves. The Classification Bureau measured 3 things: psychic potential, biological hardiness, and technological achievement at the moment of first contact. Species that scored high on all 3 metrics became allies. Species that scored low became property. Ambassador Keth Voran had served the Classification Bureau for 300 years. He had personally delivered the fate of over 200 species. Some had wept, some had fought, some had simply accepted their new lives as servants to the Dominion. It was always the same in the end. The weak served the strong. This was the natural order of the universe. When his scout ships first detected the small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, Keth Voran felt nothing but boredom. Another primitive world. Another species to catalog. Another routine mission. The initial scans were disappointing. The dominant species called themselves humans. They had no psychic ability whatsoever, not even the faintest trace. Their bodies were laughably fragile, requiring a very specific mix of gases to breathe, clean water to drink, and temperatures within a narrow range to survive. A Velthrani child could survive conditions that would kill the strongest human in minutes. Their technology was equally unimpressive. They had only recently learned to travel between planets in their own solar system. They had no faster-than-light engines, no energy shields, no weapons that could threaten a Dominion warship. They were still burning dead plants and splitting atoms for power, like children playing with fire. Keth Voran reviewed the data and made his decision in less than an hour. Humanity would be classified as a labor species. They would serve the Dominion, performing simple tasks that didn't require psychic abilities. It was more merciful than extinction, which was the only alternative for species that refused to comply. On the morning of June 15, 2147, 12 Velthrani warships appeared in Earth's sky. They were massive vessels, each one 5 kilometers long, shaped like curved blades made of black metal that seemed to absorb light. They positioned themselves above the major cities of Earth: New York, Beijing, Moscow, New Delhi, London, and others, and simply waited. Humanity's response was immediate chaos. Military forces around the world went to high alert. Television networks interrupted their programming. People fled into the streets, looking up at the dark shapes that hung motionless in the clouds. Some fell to their knees and prayed. Others screamed in terror. A few just stood in silence, unable to process what they were seeing. Ambassador Keth Voran waited exactly 24 hours before making contact. He wanted the humans to understand their position first. He wanted them to feel the fear. When he finally spoke, his voice was broadcast on every frequency that humanity used for communication. Televisions, radios, phones, and computers all carried the same message, translated into every human language through technology, far beyond anything Earth possessed. People of Earth, Keth Voran began, his tone flat and emotionless. I am Ambassador Keth Voran of the Velthrani Dominion. We have watched your species for some time now. We have measured your abilities and your potential. We have made our judgment. He paused, letting the words sink in. Your species has been classified as a labor class. You possess no psychic abilities. Your bodies are weak. Your technology is primitive. You have nothing of value to offer the galaxy, except your service. This is not punishment. This is simply the natural order. Around the world, People listened in horror. In the United Nations building in New York, world leaders gathered around screens, their faces pale with shock. In small villages and great cities, in hospitals and schools, in homes and workplaces, humanity heard its fate being announced by an alien voice that cared nothing for their hopes, their dreams, or their history. You have 7 days to comply, Kethvorin continued. Your governments will surrender all military assets. Your people will be organized into work groups and assigned to Dominion projects across the galaxy. Your children will be educated in proper service to their betters. Your planet will become a processing center for new labor species. His black eyes stared into the camera, cold and empty. If you refuse, if you resist, if you fight, we will destroy you. Not because we hate you, not because we enjoy killing, simply because a species that cannot serve has no purpose. You have 7 days. Choose wisely. The transmission ended. For a long moment, the world was silent. Then the arguing began. In emergency sessions around the globe, leaders debated what to do. Some called for immediate surrender. What choice did they have against technology so far beyond their own? Some demanded resistance, even if it meant death. Some suggested trying to negotiate, to buy time, to find some way out of this nightmare. The United Nations convened an emergency meeting. Every nation sent representatives, even those that had been enemies for generations. For the first time in human history, there was no talk of borders or politics or old grudges. There was only the question of survival. General Yuki Tanaka of Japan stood before the assembly. She was 63 years old, with short gray hair and eyes that had seen decades of military service. She had led peacekeeping forces in 3 conflicts and was respected as one of the finest strategic minds on Earth. We cannot win a direct fight, she said, her voice calm and clear. Their ships are beyond anything we can build. Their weapons would destroy our cities before we could fire a single shot. If we attack them openly, we die. Murmurs of despair filled the room. But, she continued, holding up one hand, we are not helpless. We are not animals waiting for slaughter. We are human beings, and we have one advantage that the Velthrani have not considered. The room fell silent. They think we are weak because we have no psychic powers. They think we are primitive because our technology is young. They look at us and see only what we lack. General Tanaka's eyes swept across the assembly. They do not see what we are. She pressed a button, and images appeared on the screens behind her. Images of human history. The pyramids of Egypt, built by people with no machines. The Great Wall of China, stretching across mountains. Factories producing weapons during world wars. The Apollo rockets reaching the moon. Medical breakthroughs that conquered diseases. Cities rising from ruins after devastating wars. We are survivors, General Tanaka said. We have fought ice ages and plagues. We have fought each other for thousands of years. We have been knocked down again and again. And every time, we have gotten back up. Every single time. She stepped closer to the assembly. The Velthrani measure species by psychic power and biological strength. They have never encountered a species like us, one that survives not because of natural gifts, but because we refuse to die. They do not understand what we are capable of when we are pushed against a wall. What do you suggest? Asked the Secretary General, his voice heavy with exhaustion. Silence, General Tanaka replied. Silence? We give them no response. Not surrender, not defiance. We make them wait and wonder. And while they wait, we prepare. She outlined her plan. It was called Protocol Prometheus, named after the ancient Greek god who gave fire to humanity. Every nation would contribute its resources, military, industrial, scientific, to a unified effort. Old rivalries would be set aside. Old secrets would be shared. Humanity would become one people, working toward one goal. We have 7 days, General Tanaka concluded. It is not enough time to build a fleet or develop new weapons. But it is enough time to show them that we are not afraid. And it is enough time to learn. The vote was unanimous. In the days that followed, something remarkable happened. Countries that had pointed nuclear weapons at each other for decades began sharing intelligence. Scientists from rival nations worked together in the same laboratories. Soldiers who had been trained to fight each other trained together instead. Russia shared its advanced missile technology with the United States. China opened its space program to international cooperation. India's computer scientists joined forces with programmers from Europe and South America. The entire world became a single team, united against a common enemy. Ambassador Keth Varan watched from his flagship, increasingly puzzled. His translators intercepted Earth's communications, but something strange was happening. The humans were using old languages, dead languages that had not been spoken for centuries. They were using codes that didn't match any known encryption system. Their satellites went dark one by one, and their population centers continued to function as normal while revealing nothing. They should be panicking, his second-in-command observed. They should be fighting among themselves. Weak species always fragment under pressure. Yes, Keth Varan agreed, his forearms folded across his chest. They should be. He sent a request to Dominion Command for reinforcement ships. It was a precaution, nothing more. A species with no psychic powers and primitive technology could not possibly threaten the Dominion, but still, the silence from Earth made him uncomfortable. Deep beneath the surface of the planet, in bunkers built to survive nuclear war, humanity's best minds worked on a secret project. A Velthrani probe had crashed on Earth 3 years before the invasion, a small scout vessel that had malfunctioned and fallen into the Pacific Ocean. The world's governments had kept it hidden, studying it in secret, learning what they could from its alien technology. Dr. Amara Osei led the research team. She was a physicist from Ghana, a brilliant woman who had spent her career studying theoretical energy systems. Now she was studying something far more important, the secrets of an alien civilization. The Velthrani technology is based on psychic energy, she explained to her team. Their ships, their weapons, their communications, all of it relies on their mental abilities. They channel their psychic power through crystal matrices that amplify and direct it. Can we replicate it? Asked one of her colleagues. Dr. Osei shook her head. We have no psychic ability. We cannot generate the energy their systems require. She paused, her eyes bright with excitement. But we can redirect it. She showed them her findings. The crystal matrices in the crashed probe could be modified to absorb psychic energy rather than channel it. With enough crystals, they could potentially disrupt Velthrani technology, scramble their communications, weaken their shields, even disable their weapons. It's not a perfect solution, she admitted. We don't have enough crystals to protect the entire planet, but we might be able to protect key locations, and we might be able to give our people a fighting chance. There was another discovery, too, one that changed everything. The Velthrani had scanned humanity and found no psychic potential. This was true, but they had never asked why humans had no psychic abilities. They had simply assumed that humans were too primitive to develop them. Dr. Osei's team discovered the truth. Human brains had evolved differently from other intelligent species. Instead of developing psychic pathways, humans had developed something else, an incredible capacity for pattern recognition and rapid adaptation. Their minds could process information, identify threats, and develop responses faster than any species the Dominion had ever encountered. We didn't evolve psychic powers because we didn't need them, Dr. Osei realized. Our ancestors survived by outthinking their predators, not by fighting them directly. We are problem solvers. We are adapters. We are learners. This was humanity's true advantage. They could study their enemies, find weaknesses, and develop solutions faster than should have been possible. The Velthrani had built their empire over 50,000 years of slow, careful expansion. Humanity had gone from horse-drawn carriages to landing on the moon in less than a century. The Velthrani expected their enemies to fight the same way they always had. They expected predictable responses, traditional warfare, logical strategies. They had no idea what was coming. On the 6th day, General Tanaka received reports from teams around the world. The results exceeded her expectations. Engineers had found ways to weaponize ordinary satellites, turning communication devices into kinetic projectiles. Scientists had modified nuclear warheads to penetrate Velthrani shielding. Pilots had trained in simulators designed to mimic alien ship movements. It wasn't enough to win. General Tanaka knew that. But it might be enough to survive. And survival was all that mattered. On the 7th day, Ambassador Keth Varan broadcast his final message. Your time has ended, humans. You have not surrendered. You have not responded. This is your final opportunity. Submit now, or face destruction. You have 1 hour. Earth remained silent. Keth Varan waited, his black eyes fixed on the blue planet below. Around him, 50 warships now circled Earth. The reinforcements had arrived. 50 ships armed with weapons that could melt continents. 50 ships crewed by beings who viewed humans as nothing more than animals. Perhaps they are simply too primitive to understand, his second-in-command suggested. Perhaps they do not realize what they face. Perhaps, Kethvoran agreed. But deep in his mind, doubt lingered. Something about the humans' silence felt wrong. It felt like something waiting to happen. In bunkers around the world, humanity held its breath. Soldiers kissed pictures of their families. Scientists made final adjustments to untested weapons. Leaders spoke quiet words of encouragement to their people. General Tanaka sat in the command center, surrounded by screens showing every Velthrani ship in orbit. She had spent her entire life preparing for war. She had studied every conflict in human history, learned from every victory and defeat. She knew that humanity faced the greatest battle of its existence, but she also knew something the Velthrani did not. Humans had spent their entire history fighting each other. They had developed weapons and strategies and tactics that no other species could imagine. They had learned to fight in every environment, against every type of enemy, under every possible condition. They had turned war into a science and an art. The Velthrani had conquered weak species. They had never faced a species that had been at war with itself for 10,000 years. General Tanaka looked at the countdown clock. 5 minutes until the Velthrani deadline expired. 5 minutes until humanity faced its ultimate test. She thought of her grandchildren, sleeping safely in a bunker beneath Tokyo. She thought of all the children around the world, innocent lives that depended on what happened in the next few hours. She thought of every generation that had come before, every ancestor who had survived impossible odds so that she could be here. Now, in this moment, all stations report ready, her communications officer announced. General Tanaka nodded. Her voice was steady as she spoke the words that would change history. Tell them we're ready too. The hour expired. The Velthrani fleet began to move toward Earth, weapons charging, ready to begin the pacification of another primitive species. They had no idea that they were about to face something they had never encountered in 50,000 years of conquest. They were about to face humanity, and humanity was angry. The Velthrani fleet moved through Earth's orbit like predators, circling wounded prey. 50 warships, each one capable of destroying a continent, arranged themselves in a perfect sphere around the blue planet. Their weapons hummed with energy, ready to begin what they called pacification. Ambassador Kethvoran stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Divine Judgment, watching the planet below. In his 300 years of service, he had witnessed the fall of many civilizations. Most species surrendered immediately when they saw the Dominion's power. The few that resisted were crushed within hours. It was always the same, but something felt different this time. Begin the descent, he ordered. Target the major population centers. We will demonstrate our power, then offer them one final chance to submit. His tactical officer hesitated. Ambassador, our sensors are detecting unusual activity on the planet's surface, energy signatures that do not match their known technology. Unusual how? I cannot determine their source or purpose. They appear to be coming from beneath the surface underground facilities that were not present in our initial scans. Kethvoran felt a flicker of unease. Send a scout ship to investigate. The rest of the fleet will proceed as planned. The scout ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, heading toward a remote location in the mountains of North America. The Velthrani pilot felt confident as he approached. His ship's shields could withstand anything the humans possessed. Nuclear weapons, missiles, lasers, none of them could penetrate Dominion technology. He never saw what killed him. A projectile traveling at 30 kilometers per second struck his ship from below. It was nothing more than a tungsten rod, a long bar of heavy metal with no explosives, no guidance system, no technology at all, just mass and speed. The impact released more energy than a nuclear bomb, vaporizing the scout ship in an instant. On the Divine Judgment, alarms began to sound. Scout vessel destroyed, the tactical officer reported, his voice tight with shock. Single projectile impact. Origin point. Surface-based launcher, previously undetected. Kethvoran's forearms clenched into fists. How is that possible? Our sensors should have detected any launcher capable of threatening our ships. The launcher was hidden underground, Ambassador. It appears the humans have been building weapons in secret weapons we did not know they possessed. Before Kethvoran could respond, More alarms filled the bridge. Across the fleet, sensors detected hundreds of objects rising from Earth's surface. Satellites that had been dark for days were now active, their orbits shifting, moving into new positions. Space stations that had appeared abandoned were powering up, revealing hidden systems. And then the humans attacked. General Yuki Tanaka had spent the past 7 days turning everything in Earth's orbit into a weapon. Communication satellites had been fitted with small thrusters and dense metal cores, kinetic impactors that could be guided toward targets. Old space stations had been rigged with nuclear devices. Defunct rockets and discarded boosters had been collected and armed with explosives. The Velthrani had superior technology, but they had never faced an enemy willing to weaponize garbage. Fire all orbital assets, General Tanaka commanded. Target their formation, spread them out, make them chase. Across Earth's orbit, thousands of objects began moving at once. Satellites became missiles. Space junk became shrapnel. The remains of decades of space exploration transformed into an improvised arsenal. The first wave caught the Velthrani completely off guard. 12 ships were destroyed in the opening minutes not by advanced weapons, but by simple projectiles moving too fast to dodge. The kinetic impactors punched through shields designed to stop energy weapons. The nuclear devices detonated against hulls built to withstand laser fire. The debris clouds tore through sensor arrays and communication dishes. "Evasive action," Kethvoran shouted. "All ships, break formation." The ordered sphere of warships dissolved into chaos as each vessel tried to avoid the storm of projectiles. This was exactly what General Tanaka wanted. Spread out. The Velthrani ships could not coordinate their attacks. Alone, they were vulnerable. From hidden bases around the world, humanity launched its second wave. Missiles rose from every continent, carrying warheads designed by Dr. Amaro Osei's team. These were not ordinary nuclear weapons. Each one contained fragments of crystal from the crashed Velthrani probe crystals modified to absorb and disrupt psychic energy. When they detonated near a Velthrani ship, they created zones of interference where psychic-based technology failed. A warship caught in the blast suddenly lost power. Its shields flickered and died. Its weapons went offline. Its crew, dependent on their psychic abilities for everything, found themselves blind and helpless. Human fighter jets, launched from carriers and airfields around the world, swarmed the disabled ship. They were tiny compared to the massive Velthrani vessel insects attacking an elephant, but the elephant's skin was no longer protected. Missiles struck the hull. Cannons tore through metal. The warship, one of the most powerful vessels in the Dominion fleet, fell burning from the sky. On the bridge of the Divine Judgment, Kethvoran watched in disbelief. This was impossible. The humans had no psychic abilities, no advanced technology, no way to threaten Dominion warships. Every analysis, every study, every model had predicted their easy defeat. "How?" he whispered. "How are they doing this?" His second-in-command had no answer. The battle raged for 3 days. The humans did not fight like any enemy the Velthrani had ever faced. They did not form battle lines or follow predictable strategies. They attacked from everywhere at once, from orbit, from the atmosphere, from the ground, from the oceans. They used weapons the Velthrani had never seen and tactics that made no sense. Fishing boats carried torpedoes that struck Velthrani ships attempting to land troops. Cargo planes dropped bombs that scattered crystal fragments across the battlefield, disrupting psychic communications. Civilian vehicles rigged with explosives drove into enemy formations. Even individual humans, armed with nothing but rifles and determination, fought against beings twice their size. The Velthrani had expected to crush a primitive species in hours. Instead, they found themselves in a war, unlike anything in their history. "They are insane," one Velthrani commander reported to Kethvoran. "They attack without regard for their own lives. They sacrifice themselves to destroy single targets. They fight even when they have no chance of winning. What kind of species behaves this way?" Kethvoran had no answer. In 50,000 years, the Dominion had never encountered such ferocity. Other species fought to survive. Humans seemed to fight out of pure rage. General Tanaka coordinated the battle from a bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. She slept only in brief moments, eating while reviewing reports, planning while receiving updates. Around her, a staff of hundreds worked to direct humanity's defense. "We've lost Australia's northern defense grid," her aide reported. "Enemy forces are landing near Darwin. Redirect the Indonesian reserves. Have the New Zealand Air Wing provide cover. Tanaka studied the tactical display. What's the status of Operation Prometheus? Dr. Osei reports the device is nearly ready. She needs 3 more hours. She has 2. Tell her humanity is counting on her. Dr. Amara Osei had not slept in 4 days. She stood in a laboratory filled with alien crystals, human machinery, and sleep-deprived scientists who had worked themselves to exhaustion. Their task was simple to describe and nearly impossible to achieve: create a weapon that could disable every Velthrani ship at once. The frequency modulation is still unstable, one of her team members reported. If we activate it now, there's a 40% chance it fails completely, and a 60% chance it saves our species. Dr. Osei replied. Keep working. We'll take those odds if we have to. She turned to look at the device they had built. It was ugly, a tangle of alien crystals and human electronics held together by welding and hope. It looked nothing like the elegant Velthrani technology it was designed to destroy, but if her calculations were correct, it would broadcast a pulse of disrupted psychic energy strong enough to affect every ship in orbit. If her calculations were wrong, they were all dead anyway. The Velthrani had begun landing troops on Earth's surface. Thousands of soldiers in powered armor, each one 3 meters tall and armed with weapons that could vaporize a human at 100 meters. They expected to sweep across the planet, crushing resistance wherever they found it. They found resistance everywhere. In the ruins of Shanghai, human soldiers fought from building to building, using the rubble as cover. They had learned quickly that Velthrani armor was weakest at the joints and that a well-placed explosive could bring down even the largest enemy. In the forests of Brazil, guerrilla fighters struck from the trees, vanishing before the Velthrani could respond. They had coated themselves with mud and leaves, becoming invisible to alien sensors designed to detect more advanced camouflage. In the mountains of Switzerland, tunnels built to survive nuclear war became fortresses. The Velthrani soldiers who entered those tunnels found that their size was no longer an advantage in the narrow passages. Human soldiers could fight them one at a time, and everywhere, humans showed a quality that the Velthrani had never seen before. They kept fighting even when they were losing. A Velthrani commander captured a human soldier during a battle in Eastern Europe. The human was badly wounded, his body broken, his weapons gone. By all logic, he should have surrendered. Instead, he spat in the commander's face. "Why do you still fight?" the commander asked, genuinely confused. "You cannot win. Your species will be conquered. Your resistance only increases your suffering." The human laughed through broken teeth. "You don't understand, do you? We're not fighting to win. We're fighting because that's what humans do. We fight. We've always fought. Against nature, against disease, against each other. We never stop fighting. Never." He died moments later, but his words stayed with the commander. This species was not like the others. They were not rational. They did not calculate odds and make logical decisions. They fought because fighting was in their nature, built into every cell of their bodies. For the first time, the Velthrani commander felt something he had never experienced in 100 battles. He felt afraid. On the 3rd day of the battle, Kethvoran received a transmission from Earth. It was General Tanaka, her face calm despite the chaos around her. "Ambassador," she said, "I want you to look at your fleet." Kethvoran looked at his tactical display. Of the 50 ships that had begun the invasion, only 23 remained. The others floated as debris in Earth's orbit, destroyed by a species that should not have been able to scratch their paint. "You came here expecting easy prey," General Tanaka continued. "You looked at us and saw weakness. No psychic powers, fragile bodies, primitive technology. You thought you understood us." She leaned closer to the camera. "You measured us by the wrong metrics. We are not powerful because of what we have. We are powerful because of what we are. We are survivors. We have faced extinction 100 times, ice ages, plagues, wars, disasters of every kind, and we are still here. Every single time, we are still here." General Tanaka's voice hardened. "You want to know why? Because we never, ever give up. You can destroy our cities. You can kill our people. You can burn our entire planet to ash, and whoever survives will crawl out of the ruins, pick up a weapon, and keep fighting. That is what it means to be human." Kethvoran said nothing. For the first time in 300 years, he had no response. "Leave now," General Tanaka said. Take your remaining ships and go. Tell your masters what you found here. Tell them that Earth is not a world of slaves. Tell them that if they send another fleet, we will destroy that one too, and the next, and the next, until there are no more fleets to send. She paused. Or stay and fight. The choice is yours. But know this. You cannot break us. No one can. The transmission ended. Keth Varan stood on his bridge, surrounded by officers who looked to him for guidance. The logical choice was retreat. They had lost more than half their forces against a species that should have been helpless. Continuing the battle would mean more losses, more destroyed ships, more dead crew. But retreat meant admitting defeat. It meant returning to the Dominion and confessing that a labor-class species had fought the mighty Velthrani to a standstill. It meant the end of his career, his reputation, everything he had built over 3 centuries. Continue the attack, he ordered. Full planetary bombardment. If we cannot conquer them, we will destroy them. The remaining ships moved into position, their heaviest weapons charging. These were city killers, designed to crack continental plates and boil oceans. One volley would end human civilization forever. General Tanaka watched the ships positioning themselves. She had expected this. The Velthrani were too proud to retreat, too arrogant to accept defeat. They would rather destroy Earth than admit they had been beaten. Dr. Osei, she said into her communicator. We're out of time. Is the device ready? There was a pause. Then Dr. Osei's voice came through, exhausted but determined. Ready as it will ever be. On your order, General. Tanaka looked at the tactical display one last time. 23 enemy ships, weapons charging, preparing to end everything humanity had ever built. Against them, a desperate weapon cobbled together from alien scraps and human ingenuity. She thought of her grandchildren. She thought of every child on Earth, every family, every dream that would end if she failed. She thought of all the generations who had fought and struggled and died so that humanity could reach this moment. Activate the device, she said. Deep beneath Earth's surface, Dr. Osei pressed a button. The pulse was invisible, but its effects were immediate. Across Earth's orbit, Velthrani ships went dark. Shields failed. Weapons powered down. Engines died. The psychic energy that powered every system was disrupted, scattered, neutralized. 23 warships became 23 helpless hulks, drifting through space without power or propulsion. All ships report total system failure, the tactical officer on the Divine Judgment reported, his voice hollow with shock. We have lost all psychic-based technology, shields, weapons, engines, everything. We are dead in space. Keth Varan stood frozen. In 50,000 years, no enemy had ever disabled a Velthrani fleet. No enemy had ever developed technology to counter their psychic abilities. No enemy had ever turned their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. Until now. Ambassador, a communications officer said quietly. The humans are launching ships. Armed ships. They're coming for us. Keth Varan looked at the display. Dozens of human vessels were rising from Earth, military spacecraft held in reserve, now launching to finish what they had started. They were small and primitive compared to Velthrani warships. But the Velthrani warships were helpless. What do we do? Ambassador? His second-in-command asked. Keth Varan had no answer. For the first time in his long life, he had none. General Tanaka watched the human fleet approach the disabled Velthrani ships. She gave one final order. Capture as many ships as possible. Kill only if necessary. And save the ambassador's flagship for me. I want to deliver our terms in person. Humanity had not just survived. Humanity had won, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Divine Judgment drifted through Earth's orbit, dark and powerless. Inside, Ambassador Keth Varan sat in his command chair, surrounded by officers who no longer had anything to command. Their ships were dead, their weapons were silent, their proud fleet had been reduced to floating wreckage by a species they had dismissed as primitive. A human shuttle approached the flagship, small and crude compared to the massive Velthrani vessel. It docked at an emergency airlock that still functioned on backup power. Moments later, the sound of metal cutting through metal echoed through the corridors. General Yuki Tanaka entered the bridge of the Divine Judgment, with 20 soldiers at her back. She was shorter than every Velthrani in the room, her body wrapped in a simple combat uniform, her gray hair tied back severely. She carried no weapon, she didn't need one. Keth Varan rose to face her, Even defeated, he stood nearly a meter taller than the human general. His black eyes reflected nothing. "You have won a battle," he said, his voice controlled despite his fury. "Do not think you have won a war. The Dominion has 10,000 fleets. We will return with a force so vast that your entire planet will burn." General Tanaka looked up at him without flinching. "You're right," she said. "You have thousands of fleets, millions of ships, billions of soldiers. If you throw everything you have at Earth, you might eventually destroy us." She smiled, a thin, cold expression. "But how many ships will you lose? How many soldiers? How much of your precious dominion will you sacrifice to crush one small planet?" She stepped closer, her eyes locked on his. "And what happens to your empire while you're focused on us? What happens to all those other species you've enslaved when they see that the mighty Velthrani can be beaten? What happens when they start to hope?" Kethvoran said nothing. He had no answer because he knew she was right. The Dominion's power rested on the belief that resistance was impossible. Humanity had just proven that belief wrong. "Here are my terms," General Tanaka continued. "You will return to your Dominion and deliver a message. Earth is not a slave world. Any ship that enters our solar system will be destroyed. Any attempt to attack us will be met with total resistance. We are not your property. We are not your laborers. We are human beings, and we will die free before we live as slaves. And if the Dominion refuses, then we will come to you." For the first time, something like surprise flickered across Kethvoran's face. "Come to us? You have no faster-than-light capability. You cannot threaten worlds beyond your own system." General Tanaka gestured to one of her officers, who stepped forward holding a data tablet. "We captured 4 of your ships intact," she said. "We've already begun studying them. Your technology is impressive, but it's not magic. We understand the principles. Within a year, we'll have our own FTL engines. Within 5 years, we'll have our own fleet." She leaned closer. "You gave us the keys to the galaxy, Ambassador. That was a mistake." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "One more thing. I know about the other species you've enslaved. The Keth, the Ymirians, the Silicates, all the races you've classified as labor class or worse. I know they're watching what happened here. I want you to tell them something from me." "What message?" "Tell them to wait. Tell them hope is coming. Tell them that Earth remembers what freedom means, and we intend to share it." General Tanaka walked out of the bridge. Behind her, Kethvoran stood in the darkness of his dead ship, feeling something he had not experienced in 300 years, fear of the future. 6 months passed. On Earth, the aftermath of the invasion changed everything. Old national borders became meaningless. Old conflicts were forgotten. The United Earth Council, formed during the desperate days of the invasion, became a permanent government. For the first time in human history, humanity truly spoke with one voice. The cost of victory had been terrible. 12 million people had died in the battle, soldiers, civilians, men and women and children caught in the crossfire of a war they never asked for. Cities lay in ruins. Entire regions had been devastated by Velthrani weapons, but humanity had survived. And now they were preparing. Dr. Amara Osei led the technology division of the newly formed Terran Defense Force. Her team had spent months tearing apart the captured Velthrani ships, learning their secrets, adapting their technology for human use. "The basic principle is elegant," she explained to the council during a briefing. "Their FTL drives fold space itself, creating a tunnel between 2 points. The energy requirements are enormous, but the crystal matrices channel psychic energy efficiently enough to make it practical. But we have no psychic energy," one council member pointed out. Dr. Osei smiled. "No, we don't. But we have something else, the ability to generate and store electrical energy in quantities they never imagined. Their technology assumes psychic power is the only energy source worth using. They never developed efficient batteries, capacitors, or fusion reactors. We have." She displayed a holographic diagram of a modified Velthrani drive. "We've replaced the psychic input system with a fusion reactor. It's less elegant, but it works. Our first test ship completed a successful FTL jump last week. 1 light year. Perfectly controlled. No complications." The council chamber erupted in cheers. Dr. Osei waited for quiet before continuing. "Within 6 months, we'll have a fleet capable of interstellar travel. Not as large as the Dominion's forces, but capable, mobile, and equipped with the same disruption technology that disabled their ships during the invasion. General Tanaka stood to address the council. "We cannot simply wait for them to attack again," she said. "The Dominion will not accept defeat. They will return with a larger force, better prepared for our tactics. If we allow them to dictate the terms of the next battle, we lose our greatest advantage." "What do you propose?" the council president asked. "We take the war to them. Strike their staging areas before they can launch another invasion. Disrupt their supply lines. Destroy their shipyards." General Tanaka's eyes swept across the room. "And most importantly, contact the other enslaved species. Show them that resistance is possible. Help them rise up against their masters." "You're talking about a galactic war," someone said. "Against an empire that spans thousands of worlds." "I'm talking about survival," General Tanaka replied. "The Dominion will never leave us alone. They can't afford to. If word spreads that a labor-class species defeated their fleet, their entire system of control collapses. Every enslaved species will start asking questions. Every subjected world will begin to hope." She placed her hands on the table. "We didn't choose this fight, but we cannot avoid it either. The only question is whether we fight on our terms or theirs." The vote took 3 hours of debate, but the result was decisive. Humanity would build a fleet. Humanity would take the war to the stars. Humanity would not wait for death to come, they would bring it to their enemies. Captain Marcus Chen was 35 years old when he was selected to command the first Terran warship, the TES Defiance. He had been a naval officer before the invasion, commanding a destroyer in the Pacific Fleet. Now he commanded something far more powerful. The Defiance was a hybrid vessel Velthrani technology married to human engineering. Its hull was sleeker than any Earth ship had ever been, designed for speed and maneuverability. Its weapons combined human missiles and kinetic impactors with captured Velthrani energy cannons. Its shields used the same crystal matrices that Dr. Osei had turned against the invasion fleet, now repurposed for defense. But its most important feature was its crew. Every officer and sailor aboard the Defiance had lost someone in the invasion. They had all watched their cities burn, their families die, their world nearly destroyed. They carried that pain with them, and it made them dangerous. "All systems report ready, Captain," Lieutenant Commander Yuki Tanaka reported. She was the general's granddaughter, a brilliant tactical officer who had inherited her grandmother's gift for strategy. "Navigation?" Chen asked. "Course plotted for the Velthrani staging base at Corinth 7. 12 light years. We'll arrive in 3 hours." Chen looked at the stars displayed on the main screen. For all of human history, those lights had been unreachable, distant fires that could only be watched, never touched. Now he was about to travel between them as easily as sailing between continents. "Begin FTL jump," he ordered. The stars stretched into lines of light, then vanished entirely. The Defiance slipped through folded space, crossing distances that would have taken decades at conventional speeds. In the strange not space of FTL travel, time moved differently. Hours felt like minutes. The ship hummed with energy that humans had not known existed 6 months ago. Then space snapped back to normal, and Corinth 7 appeared before them. It was an industrial complex built into a dead moon, a shipyard where the Dominion constructed its warships. Massive construction bays surrounded the moon like the petals of a mechanical flower. Half-finished vessels floated in zero gravity, awaiting completion. Supply ships moved between platforms, carrying materials and workers, and defending it all were 12 Velthrani warships. "They've detected us," Lieutenant Commander Tanaka reported. "Weapons are charging. How long until they can fire?" 30 seconds. "Time to launch disruption torpedoes." 28 seconds. Captain Chen smiled. "Then we have 2 seconds to spare. Fire." The Defiance launched a spread of torpedoes, weapons designed by Dr. Osei's team, carrying warheads filled with modified crystals. They streaked toward the Velthrani ships, too fast to intercept, too numerous to avoid. The detonations were invisible to the naked eye, but their effects were immediate. Across the defensive fleet, psychic-based systems began to fail. Shields flickered, weapons powered down, engines sputtered and died. "All enemy ships disabled," Lieutenant Commander Tanaka reported, her voice tight with satisfaction. "They're dead in space. Launch fighters. Target the shipyard infrastructure. Destroy everything that can build or repair a warship." Chen watched as small craft poured from the Defiance's bays. human pilots flying human fighters into battle against an alien empire, and broadcast on all frequencies. I want every species in this sector to know who did this. The message went out across the stars, carried by communication systems that the Dominion itself had built. This is Captain Marcus Chen of the Terran ship Defiance. 1 year ago, you came to our world and called us weak. You threatened to enslave our people. You learned the truth about humanity the hard way. On the main screen, explosions blossomed across the shipyard as fighters destroyed construction bays and supply depots. Now we're returning the favor. Every Dominion installation is a target. Every fleet is vulnerable. Every world you control is no longer safe. Chen paused, letting his words sink in. But this message isn't for the Velthrani. It's for everyone else. The Keth, the Ymirians, the Silicates, all the species the Dominion has enslaved. We know you're listening. We know you've given up hope. The shipyard's central reactor detonated, taking half the facility with it. Hope again. Earth is coming, and we don't intend to stop until every slave is free. The broadcast ended. The Defiance collected its fighters and prepared for the jump home. Behind them, Corinth 7 burned. News of the attack spread faster than anyone expected. The Dominion tried to suppress it, but too many species had heard Captain Chen's message. Too many had seen the evidence of the destroyed shipyard. Too many had watched a single human ship cripple an entire defense fleet. On Keth Prime, a world where an insect-like species had served the Dominion for 3,000 years, workers began to whisper. They passed the story from one to another, careful to avoid their master's ears. A species with no psychic powers had defeated the Velthrani, a species the Classification Bureau had dismissed as primitive. If they could fight, perhaps others could too. On Ymiria, a frozen world where the crystalline Ymirians had been forced to mine their own bodies for materials the Dominion needed, elders gathered in secret caves. They discussed the human message, debating its meaning. Some said it was a trick, others said it was a sign. All agreed that something had changed. On 100 other worlds, similar conversations took place. Species that had accepted their slavery for generations began to question. Species that had given up hope began to dream. The galaxy was waking up, and on Velthros Prime, the Dominion's homeworld, the High Council met in emergency session. How is this possible? Demanded Grand Arbiter Velthran, the supreme ruler of the Dominion. He was ancient by Velthrani standards, over 1,000 years old. His blue skin faded to pale gray. How has a labor-class species developed technology capable of threatening us? They captured our ships, his military commander explained. They reverse-engineered our technology and adapted it to their own capabilities. They are more capable than our classifications suggested. Our classifications are never wrong. Perhaps they need revision. Grand Arbiter, Velthron's forearms clenched with fury. Do not suggest that our system is flawed. The Classification Bureau has guided our expansion for 50,000 years. It has never failed us. With respect, it has failed us now. The humans were classified as labor class. They were predicted to surrender or be easily conquered. Neither prediction proved accurate. The Bureau's metrics did not account for. For what? The commander hesitated. For the qualities that make humans dangerous, their aggression, their adaptability, their refusal to accept defeat even when defeat is logical. These traits were not measured. Perhaps they should have been. Grand Arbiter Velthran stood, his tall form casting a long shadow across the chamber. Dispatch a message to all sector commanders. The humans are to be reclassified as a extinction-level threat. All resources will be directed toward their complete destruction. No negotiation, no mercy. I want their planet sterilized and their species erased from history. Grand Arbiter, that will require withdrawing forces from subjugated worlds. If we concentrate on Earth, we leave ourselves vulnerable to what? The slaves. They have been broken for generations. They will not rise against us. Velthron's black eyes gleamed with certainty. Destroy the humans. Make an example of them so terrible that no species will ever dare to resist us again. That is my command. The orders went out. Across the Dominion, fleets began to mobilize. Hundreds of ships, thousands of soldiers, all converging on a single target, Earth. But the humans had not been idle. In the year since the first invasion, they had built not one ship but 50. They had trained not one crew but thousands. They had prepared not just to defend their world but to take the war to their enemies. And they had done something else, something the Dominion never expected. They had sent envoys to the enslaved worlds. Humans in small ships, carrying messages of hope and offers of alliance. Some were captured, some were killed, but some got through. Some found species willing to listen, willing to believe, willing to fight. The Keth Rebellion began 3 days after the Dominion mobilized for Earth. Workers across Keth Prime stopped working. They sabotaged factories. They destroyed equipment. They refused orders. When Velthrani soldiers came to enforce compliance, the Keth fought back not with weapons, but with numbers. Millions of workers swarming against thousands of soldiers. The soldiers killed many, but they could not kill them all. The Ymirian uprising followed within a week. The crystalline beings turned their mining tools into weapons, collapsing tunnels on their oppressors, turning their frozen world into a death trap for Velthrani troops. The silicate swarm revolt was the most dramatic. The silicates were a species of networked artificial intelligences, created by the Dominion for complex calculations but kept carefully controlled. When a human envoy delivered a virus that broke their control programming, the silicates took over every computer system in their sector. Velthrani ships suddenly found their navigation systems compromised, their weapons locked, their communications jammed. Across the galaxy, the Dominion began to fracture. Grand Arbiter Velthron received the reports with growing horror. Rebellions on a dozen worlds. Fleets recalled to deal with uprisings. The military force meant to destroy Earth scattered and diminished. Impossible, he whispered. They are labor species. They cannot fight. They cannot organize. This is impossible, but it was happening. The galaxy was rising against the Dominion, inspired by one small blue world that had refused to kneel. And on Earth, General Tanaka smiled as she reviewed the reports. It's working, she said to Dr. Osei. They're waking up, all of them. We've started something that can't be stopped. Dr. Osei replied. Even if Earth falls, even if they destroy us completely, this revolution will continue. We've given them something more powerful than any weapon. What's that? Hope. The hope that things can change. That's something you can't kill with all the fleets in the galaxy. General Tanaka nodded. The final battle was coming. The Dominion would throw everything they had left at Earth, desperate to crush the spark before it became a fire. But it was already too late. The fire was spreading across the stars, and it would not be extinguished. The galaxy was burning. 2 years had passed since the first Velthrani invasion of Earth, and in that time, everything had changed. What began as a desperate defense of one small planet had become a revolution spanning hundreds of worlds. Species that had been enslaved for millennia were rising up, fighting back, dying for freedom they had never known. And at the center of it all was humanity. Captain Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the TES Vengeance, the flagship of the newly formed Liberation Fleet. It was the largest ship humans had ever built, 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapons, carrying 10,000 soldiers and 50 fighter craft. Around it floated 200 other vessels, Terran warships, Keth cruisers, Ymirian ice ships, and dozens of other designs from species that had joined the rebellion. 2 years ago, humanity had been alone. Now they led an alliance of 30 species, united against the Dominion that had oppressed them all. Status report, Chen said. All ships accounted for, his tactical officer replied. The Keth contingent reports ready. The Ymirians are in position. The silicate network has completed its scan of the target area. Chen nodded. Through the view screen, he could see their destination, Velkrath Station, the largest military base in the Dominion's outer territories. It housed 50 warships and served as the command center for operations across 300 worlds. Taking it would cripple the Dominion's ability to respond to rebellions in half the galaxy. Any sign they know we're coming? Negative. The silicate infiltration of their communication networks is holding. They believe we're still in the Ardent sector. Chen allowed himself a small smile. The silicates had proven invaluable allies. Their ability to hack into Velthrani systems had given the Liberation Fleet an advantage that no amount of firepower could match. The Dominion was fighting blind, never knowing where the next attack would come. Begin the approach, Chen ordered. All ships to battle stations. Alarms rang across 200 vessels. Soldiers prepared for combat. Pilots climbed into fighters. Medics readied their equipment for the wounded that would surely come. The Liberation Fleet had won many battles, but none of them had been easy. The Velthrani were still powerful, still dangerous, still capable of terrible destruction, but they were no longer invincible. The fleet dropped out of FTL space within weapons range of Velkrath Station. For a moment, nothing happened. Then chaos erupted as the Dominion defenders realized they were under attack. "Disruption torpedoes away," the weapons officer called out. "Impact in 15 seconds. Chen watched the tactical display as the torpedoes streaked toward their targets. Around the station, Velthrani warships scrambled to respond, their crews rushing to battle positions they had never expected to need. The torpedoes detonated. Across the defensive fleet, ships went dark as their psychic-based systems failed. Some retained partial power. The Dominion had developed countermeasures since the first invasion of Earth, but enough were disabled to give the Liberation Fleet the advantage. "All ships, engage," Chen commanded. The battle was brutal. Velthrani ships that had survived the disruption weapons fought back with everything they had. Energy beams carved through space. Missiles exploded against shields. Fighters swarmed around larger vessels, striking at weak points and vulnerable systems. The Liberation Fleet took losses. A Keth cruiser was destroyed when a Velthrani dreadnought's main cannon tore through its hull. 3 Terran destroyers were crippled by concentrated fire. An Emirian ice ship cracked apart when its crystalline structure failed under sustained attack. But the Dominion lost more. Without their full psychic capabilities, their ships were slower, their weapons less accurate, their crews less coordinated. One by one, the defenders fell. "Station defenses are failing," the tactical officer reported. "Ground forces are requesting instructions. Tell them to secure the command center and the prisoner blocks," Chen said. "We have brothers and sisters in those cells. Get them out." Human soldiers in combat armor breached the station's hull. They fought through corridors designed for beings twice their size, using their smaller stature to find cover where the Velthrani could not. Behind them came Keth warriors, their multi-jointed limbs allowing them to climb walls and ceilings, attacking from unexpected angles. In the station's detention level, they found what they were looking for. Thousands of prisoners from dozens of species, captured in battle or enslaved for labor. Some had been there for years. Some had been there for generations, born in captivity, never knowing freedom. Sergeant James Okonkwo led the rescue team. He was 28 years old, the grandson of Dr. Amara Osei, who had cracked the secrets of Velthrani technology. Now he was freeing the people his grandmother's work had helped him reach. "We're here to get you out," he told the prisoners. "All of you. Every species, every individual. No one gets left behind." A young Keth prisoner approached him, her insectoid eyes wide with disbelief. "You are human? The species that started the rebellion?" "One of them," James said. "But this isn't just our fight anymore. It belongs to everyone who wants to be free." The Keith made a sound that might have been laughter. "The Velthrani told us that resisting was impossible, that we were too weak, too primitive, too worthless to fight back. They showed us the history of 1,000 species that had tried and failed. Did they tell you about the ones that succeeded? They said there were none." James smiled. "They lied. Now come on. We have a war to win." The Battle of Velkrath Station ended 3 hours after it began. 42 Dominion ships were destroyed. The station itself was captured intact, along with its command databases, its weapons, stockpiles, and thousands of freed prisoners. The Liberation Fleet lost 23 vessels and nearly 8,000 soldiers. It was their greatest victory yet. And it was only the beginning. On Velthros Prime, Grand Arbiter Velthron received the news with something approaching despair. The holographic map before him showed the state of his empire. Rebellions across 60 worlds. Liberation Fleet attacks on 40 installations. Communication networks compromised. Supply lines disrupted. 2 years. In just 2 years, the humans had transformed from a conquered species to a galactic threat. They had done what no enemy had ever done. They had united the Dominion's victims against their masters. "How many ships can we still field?" he asked his military commander. "Approximately 400, Grand Arbiter. But many are dispersed dealing with local uprisings. We could concentrate perhaps 200 for a major offensive." "And the humans?" "Their Liberation Fleet has grown to over 200 vessels, with more joining every month. They have established bases across 5 sectors. Their allies provide resources, soldiers, and intelligence." The commander paused. "They are no longer fighting alone, Grand Arbiter. They have become the heart of a galactic coalition. Velthron closed his eyes. For 50,000 years, the Dominion had ruled through fear and the belief that resistance was impossible. Now a single species had proven that belief wrong, and the entire galaxy was waking from its nightmare. There is only one option left, he said slowly. We must strike at their heart. Destroy Earth, and the rebellion loses its symbol. Without the humans to inspire them, the other species will lose hope. They will remember why they feared us. Earth is heavily defended now, Grand Arbiter. They have built stations and weapon platforms throughout their system. An attack would be costly. Then we will pay the cost. Assemble every ship we can spare. Strip the defenses from worlds that have not yet rebelled. Gather the largest fleet in Dominion history. Velthron's voice hardened. We go to Earth, and we end this. General Yuki Tanaka was 70 years old when she received the intelligence report. She sat in the war room of the Terran Defense Council, surrounded by officers and allied commanders who had gathered to hear the news. 400 ships, she said quietly. They're bringing everything they have left. Our forces can't match those numbers. Admiral Chen, Marcus Chen's father, now the senior naval officer of the Terran fleet, pointed out. Even with our allies, we have less than 300 vessels available for system defense. Then we need more allies. Tanaka turned to the Silicate representative, a hovering drone that served as the interface for their vast collective intelligence. Can your network delay them? Give us time to gather reinforcements? We can introduce errors into their navigation systems, the Silicate replied, its voice artificial but somehow still conveying uncertainty. But their commanders will eventually realize the sabotage. We can give you perhaps 3 weeks. No more. 3 weeks. Tanaka looked at the map of the galaxy, at all the worlds that had risen against the Dominion, at all the species that were fighting for freedom. We need to send a message to everyone. Tell them that the final battle is coming. Tell them that Earth needs help. Will they come? Someone asked. Many of them are still fighting their own rebellions. They can't spare ships. Some will come, Tanaka said firmly. Many won't. But we didn't start this revolution alone, and we won't end it alone. Send the message. The call went out across the stars. From Earth, the planet that had sparked a galactic uprising, came a plea for help. The Dominion was coming. The final battle would decide the fate of the rebellion. Anyone who could send ships, who could send soldiers, who could send anything at all, Earth needed them. On 100 worlds, the message was received. Species that were fighting their own battles, struggling to survive, barely holding on against Dominion forces, they all heard humanity's call. Some turned away. They had their own problems, their own wars, their own survival to worry about. They could not spare anything for a distant planet, no matter how much they owed it. But others responded. From Keth Prime came 12 cruisers, all that remained of their newly formed fleet. Their commander, a veteran of the original rebellion, broadcast a simple message. You gave us hope. Now we give you our ships. From Ymiria came 7 ice ships, crewed by crystalline beings who had never seen Earth but had heard stories of its people. We were dying slowly under Dominion rule, their leader said. Better to die quickly, fighting for freedom. From a dozen other worlds came ships of every size and design. Some were barely more than armed transports. Some were captured Velthrani vessels crewed by freed slaves. Some were ancient relics pulled from museums and retrofitted for combat. They came because Earth had shown them that fighting back was possible. They came because humans had sacrificed everything to spark a revolution. They came because, after generations of slavery, they finally had something worth dying for. Captain Marcus Chen watched the Allied ships arrive at Earth's staging area. His heart swelled with an emotion he couldn't quite name. Pride, perhaps, or gratitude, or simply the overwhelming knowledge that humanity was no longer alone in the universe. How many do we have now? He asked his XO. 347 vessels, sir. More than we expected. Still less than the Dominion force. Numbers aren't everything. Chen smiled. We proved that when they first came to Earth. A smaller force can win if it fights smarter, if it wants victory more, if it refuses to give up. He thought about the past 2 years. All the battles, all the losses, all the friends who had died fighting for something they believed in. He thought about his father, who had commanded a simple submarine before the invasion and now led humanity's entire fleet. He thought about General Tanaka, who had held their world together during its darkest hours. He thought about Dr. Osei and her team, who had turned captured technology into the key to victory. Most of all, he thought about what they were fighting for. Not just survival, not just revenge. They were fighting for the right to exist as free beings, to choose their own destiny, to never kneel before masters who called them weak. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we're receiving a transmission from the Dominion fleet. Grand Arbiter Velthron wishes to speak with our commander." Chen nodded. "Put him through." The view screen flickered, and Velthron's face appeared. He looked older than the recordings Chen had seen, gray where he had once been blue, his black eyes surrounded by lines of stress and exhaustion. Ruling a collapsing empire had taken its toll. "Captain Chen," Velthron said, "I know your face. You destroyed our shipyard at Corinth 7. You broadcast the message that sparked rebellions across my empire. You have cost us more than any enemy in 50,000 years. I'll take that as a compliment. It was not meant as one." Velthron's voice carried centuries of anger. "Do you understand what you have done? The Dominion brought order to the galaxy. We ended wars between species. We prevented the chaos that would have destroyed countless worlds. We built an empire that lasted 50 millennia. You built a prison," Chen replied. "You enslaved billions of beings and called it order. You crushed anyone who dared to be different and called it peace. The only thing you brought to the galaxy was suffering. And what have you brought? War, death, destruction on a scale this galaxy has never seen. Millions have died in your revolution. Worlds have burned. Species have been devastated. You call us monsters, but look at what you have created." Chen felt the weight of those words. They were true. In a way, the rebellion had cost countless lives. The galaxy was torn apart by conflict that humanity had sparked. Was freedom worth such a terrible price? Then he remembered the slaves in the detention blocks, the children born in captivity, the species that had spent generations being told they were worthless, that their only purpose was to serve their betters. He remembered the fear in their eyes when they were rescued, and the hope that replaced it when they realized they were free. "Yes," he said finally, "millions have died, and millions more may die before this is over. But those millions chose to fight. They chose to risk death for the chance to live as free beings. You never gave them that choice. You decided their fates for them, based on metrics that measured everything except what really mattered. And what is that? The willingness to fight for something greater than yourself. The ability to hope even when hope seems impossible. The refusal to accept that your value is determined by someone else." Chen leaned forward. "You measured us and found us weak. You were wrong. We are stronger than you ever imagined. Because our strength doesn't come from psychic powers or advanced technology. It comes from what we are willing to sacrifice for what we believe." Velthron was silent for a long moment. "We will destroy your world," he said at last. "We will kill every human being and wipe your species from history. And when you are gone, the other species will remember what happens to those who defy the Dominion. Order will be restored. Maybe," Chen admitted. "Or maybe you'll fail. Maybe you'll lose your fleet and your empire and everything you've built. Maybe the species you enslaved will finally be free, and the galaxy will remember not the Dominion's power, but its fall." He smiled. "Either way, we're going to find out. See you at Earth, Grand Arbiter." He cut the transmission. Around him, the Liberation fleet prepared for the final battle. Weapons were checked. Shields were calibrated. Pilots ran final simulations. Soldiers wrote letters to families they might never see again. And on Earth, 8 billion people looked up at the sky, knowing that their fate would soon be decided among the stars. General Tanaka addressed the planet in what might be her final broadcast. "People of Earth," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the world. "The enemy is coming. They bring the largest fleet in their history, and they intend to destroy us completely. I will not lie to you, we may not survive what is coming." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "But I want you to know something. Whatever happens in the next few days, we have already won. We have proven that a species with no psychic powers, no natural advantages, no special gifts, can stand against the masters of the galaxy. We have inspired a revolution that will never be extinguished. We have shown every enslaved being in existence that hope is not foolish, that resistance is not futile, that freedom is worth fighting for." Her eyes glistened, but her voice remained strong. Our ancestors survived ice ages and plagues. They crossed oceans and explored continents. They went to the moon with computers less powerful than the phones we carry in our pockets. They faced every challenge the universe could throw at them, and they never gave up. They passed that spirit down to us, generation after generation, until it became part of who we are. She straightened, her bearing proud. Now it's our turn. Now we face our greatest challenge. And I know in my heart, that whatever the enemy brings, we will meet it with everything we have, because that's what humans do. We fight, we endure, we survive. Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more power than a shout. And we never, ever stop. The broadcast ended. 8 billion people drew a collective breath, and the stars began to fill with enemy ships. The Dominion fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. 400 warships, the greatest armada in Velthrani history, spread across the void like a wall of death. Their black hulls blocked the distant starlight. Their weapons hummed with enough energy to crack planets. Grand Arbiter Velthron stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the blue dot that was Earth grow larger on his screens. 2 years of rebellion, 2 years of humiliation, 2 years of watching his empire crumble. It would all end here. Today, the humans would die. Today, order would be restored. Status of the enemy fleet, he demanded. 347 vessels defending the third planet. Grand Arbiter, mixed composition human ships, allied vessels from rebel species, captured Dominion craft. His tactical officer paused. They are significantly outnumbered, as they should be. Velthron's 4 arms folded across his chest. This is the natural order reasserting itself. The strong destroy the weak. It has always been this way. He gave the order. The Dominion fleet began its advance. On the bridge of the TES Vengeance, Captain Marcus Chen watched the enemy approach. The tactical display showed the odds clearly. 400 against 347. Not impossible, but not good either. Every ship in the Liberation Fleet would need to fight perfectly just to have a chance. All ships report ready, his XO announced. The Keth squadron is in position on our right flank. Ymirian ice ships are holding the left. Human vessels form the center. Chen nodded. General Tanaka had placed him in command of the fleet for this battle. His father, Admiral Chen, had argued against it. He wanted to lead the defense himself, but Tanaka had overruled him. Marcus had more combat experience against the Velthrani than any other officer. If anyone could find a way to win against impossible odds, it was him. Begin broadcasting on all frequencies, Chen ordered. I want every ship in both fleets to hear this. The communications officer opened a channel. Chen's voice went out to friend and enemy alike. Attention Dominion Fleet. This is Captain Marcus Chen, of the Terran Liberation Forces. I know why you're here. I know what you intend to do. I want you to understand something before we begin. He looked at the wall of enemy ships filling his view screen. We didn't start this war. We were living peacefully on our world when you arrived and declared us slaves. We didn't want to fight you. We just wanted to be free. But you gave us no choice. You told us we were weak, worthless, fit only to serve. You threatened to destroy us if we resisted. He stood straighter, his voice hardening. So we resisted. And everything that has happened since, every battle, every death, every world that rose against you, that's on you. You created this rebellion by refusing to see us as anything more than labor. You built the cage, and then acted surprised when the prisoners tried to escape. Chen paused. Today, one of us is going to lose everything. Maybe it will be us. Maybe Earth will burn and humanity will be erased from history. But even if that happens, you've already lost. The revolution will continue without us. The species you enslaved will never stop fighting. You can destroy Earth, but you can't destroy hope. You can't destroy the knowledge that the Dominion can be beaten. He smiled grimly. So come ahead. Let's finish this. The battle began. The first wave of Dominion ships surged forward, their weapons firing in coordinated volleys. Energy beams carved through space. Missiles streaked toward the Liberation Fleet. The void itself seemed to burn. Disruption torpedoes full spread, Chen commanded. Hundreds of torpedoes launched from the Allied fleet, their crystalline warheads designed to disable psychic-based technology. The Dominion had developed countermeasures since their first encounter with the weapons, but the torpedoes still found targets. 30 enemy ships lost power. 50 more had their systems degraded. It wasn't enough. The Dominion had simply brought too many vessels. All ships, engage at will, Chen ordered. Remember your training. Remember what we're fighting for. And remember, take as many of them with you as you can. The fleets collided. What followed was the largest space battle in the history of the galaxy. Ships exploded on both sides. Fighters swarmed around massive warships like insects around giants. Boarding parties fought hand-to-hand in corridors and control rooms. The void filled with debris and bodies and the dying screams of ships breaking apart. The Vengeance took the lead, its weapons firing continuously, its shields straining under constant attack. Chen directed the battle from the bridge, making decisions in seconds that meant life or death for thousands. Keth Squadron, reinforce Sector 7. Ymirian ships, target that dreadnought's engines. All Terran vessels, hold the center line. For 3 hours, the Liberation Fleet held. They were outnumbered, outgunned, facing an enemy with 50,000 years of military experience, but they fought with a fury that the Velthrani had never encountered. They did not retreat. They did not surrender. They traded death for death, refusing to die easily. The Dominion lost ships faster than they expected. The humans and their allies were not fighting like a desperate defense force. They were fighting like predators, seeking out weaknesses, exploiting every mistake, turning every disadvantage into an opportunity. But it was not enough. Slowly, inevitably, the Liberation Fleet began to fall. We've lost the Defiance, the tactical officer reported, his voice cracking. The Keth flagship is crippled. Ymirian losses at 40%. Chen closed his eyes for a moment. The Defiance had been his first command. Its captain had been a friend. So many friends were dying today. Maintain formation, he said quietly. Keep fighting. On the Eternal Dominion, Grand Arbiter Velthron watched the battle with growing satisfaction. The rebels were fighting hard, but they were losing. Another hour, perhaps 2, and the Liberation Fleet would be destroyed. Then Earth would burn, and the rebellion would lose its heart. Grand Arbiter, an officer interrupted. We're detecting new contacts at the edge of the system. Reinforcements? From where? The tactical display updated. Velthron felt his satisfaction turn to ice. Ships were emerging from faster-than-light travel. Not dozens, hundreds. They came from every direction, appearing in flashes of distorted space, their weapons already charging, and their designs. Velthron recognized them all. Species from across the Dominion. Species that were supposed to be subjugated. Species that had been classified as labor class or worse. The Silicate Swarm had sent their entire fleet, 500 vessels of every size. Their networked intelligence coordinating them as a single weapon. The Keth homeworld had sent ships it had been building in secret for 2 years, hidden in asteroid fields and gas giants. The Ymirians had brought ancient ships from before their conquest, preserved in ice for generations, waiting for this moment. A dozen other species had come, some with only a handful of vessels, some with entire fleets. They had left their own rebellions, their own fights, their own survival because Earth had called. How many? Velthron whispered. Over 1,000 ships, Grand Arbiter. And more arriving every minute. The new arrivals broadcast on all frequencies. A silicate voice, cold and precise, spoke for them all. The humans taught us that the Dominion could be defeated. They bled for our freedom before they even knew our names. Today, we repay that debt. Today, we fight as one. Today, the Dominion falls. The tide of battle turned. Captain Chen watched the Allied reinforcements tear into the Dominion's flanks. For a moment, he couldn't speak. He had hoped for help. He had not dared to believe this much would come. All ships, he said, his voice thick with emotion. The galaxy has answered. Now let's show them that Earth was worth saving. Push forward. Drive them back. The Liberation Fleet surged forward, renewed by hope. The combined forces of 30 species converged on the Dominion Armada, attacking from every direction. Velthrani ships that had been winning suddenly found themselves surrounded. Coordinated attacks that had been devastating were disrupted by unexpected enemies. The Dominion began to break. On the Eternal Dominion, Grand Arbiter Velthron watched his empire's last great fleet crumble. Ships that had served the Dominion for centuries were destroyed by species they had enslaved. Commanders who had never known defeat were overwhelmed by enemies they had dismissed as worthless. We must retreat, His tactical officer urged. The battle is lost. We can rebuild, recruit. New. There will be no rebuilding. Velthron's voice was hollow. If we retreat today, the rebellion grows stronger. If we survive, we do so as exiles, watching our empire fall apart world by world. The dominion that I led for 500 years ends here, one way or another. He made his decision. All ships converge on the human flagship. Destroy it at any cost. If we cannot defeat them all, we will at least kill their leader. The remaining Dominion ships, still over 100 strong, formed into a spear aimed directly at the Vengeance. They drove forward through the Allied fleet, accepting losses that would have seemed insane hours earlier. Their only goal was destruction. They're coming for us, Chen's XO warned. 80 ships, bearing directly at our position. Chen saw them coming. He could order a retreat, let other ships cover him, live to fight another day. But that would mean sacrificing the vessels that tried to protect him. That would mean letting the Dominion claim one final victory. Negative, he said. We hold position. All ships capable. Form up around the Vengeance. We end this here. The defending ships were too few. The Dominion's desperate assault broke through. Energy weapons struck the Vengeance from multiple directions. Shields failed. Hull breaches spread across the ship. Explosions tore through compartments that had been filled with living crew moments before. On the bridge, consoles exploded. Officers died at their stations. The ship screamed with the sound of metal tearing apart. Hull integrity at 30%, someone reported. Engines failing. We're losing atmosphere on decks 7 through 12. Chen gripped his command chair, blood running from a cut on his forehead. His ship was dying around him. But through the smoke and chaos, he could see the tactical display. The Dominion assault had spent itself destroying the Vengeance. Their ships were exposed, vulnerable, surrounded by Allied forces. Communications, he said, his voice steady despite everything. Send to all ships. The flagship is lost. Command transfers to the TES Prometheus. Continue the attack. Do not stop until the Dominion fleet is destroyed. Sir, we can still evacuate. There's no time. The Dominion needs to believe they've won something, or they'll scatter before we can finish them. Chen looked at his surviving crew. It's been an honor serving with you. Now get to the escape pods. That's an order. They hesitated. Some refused to go, preferring to die with their captain. But most obeyed, running for the pods while they still could. Chen stayed on the bridge, watching the battle continue on screens that flickered and died one by one. The Vengeance had been built to show that humanity could match the Dominion's greatest ships. Now it would serve one final purpose, a symbol of sacrifice, a distraction that allowed the rest of the fleet to win. Chen thought of his father, who would mourn him. He thought of General Tanaka, who had trusted him with this command. He thought of all the beings across the galaxy who had fought and died for freedom. Not a bad way to go, he murmured. Not bad at all. The Vengeance exploded. The flash of its death was visible from Earth, a new star briefly flaring among the familiar constellations. On the surface, 8 billion people watched and grieved, but the battle continued. The Dominion's final assault had cost them everything. Their remaining ships were scattered, their coordination destroyed, their commander isolated on a flagship that was surrounded by enemies. Grand Arbiter Velthron watched the end approach. The Eternal Dominion was under attack from all sides. Its shields were failing, its weapons were exhausted. Around it, the last ships of his fleet were being destroyed one by one. Grand Arbiter, an officer said quietly. What are your orders? Velthron had no orders left to give. 500 years of leadership, 50 millennia of Dominion history, it all ended here, above a small blue planet that should have been insignificant. We surrender, he said. The words felt like ashes in his mouth. The officer stared at him. Grand Arbiter, broadcast on all frequencies. The Dominion fleet surrenders. The war is over. Velthron slumped in his command chair. There's no point in more death. We have lost. The message went out. Across the battlefield, weapons fell silent. Ships that had been locked in combat disengaged. A strange quiet settled over the void, broken only by the sounds of damaged vessels and the radio chatter of thousands of relieved survivors. The battle for Earth was over. The liberation had won. Commander Zara Okonkwo stepped onto the bridge of the Eternal Dominion 3 hours later. She was 26 years old, the daughter of Sergeant James Okonkwo, who had freed prisoners at Velcrath Station, the granddaughter of Dr. Amara Osei, who had cracked the secrets of Velthrani technology. Her family had been part of this war from the beginning. Now she was here to accept its end. Grand Arbiter Velthron sat where she had been told he would be. He looked ancient, defeated, a ruler who had watched everything he built collapse around him. His black eyes met hers without hostility, only exhaustion. "You are young," he said, "to be commanding such a moment. I'm old enough." Zara stood before him, surrounded by human and allied soldiers who had fought their way through the ship. "Grand Arbiter Velthron, in the name of the Liberation Coalition, I accept your surrender. The Velthrani Dominion is dissolved, effective immediately. All enslaved species are declared free. All Dominion military forces will stand down and submit to Coalition authority. And my people? What happens to the Velthrani? That depends on them. Those who committed crimes against the species they enslaved will face justice. The rest," Zara paused, "the rest will have to learn to live as equals. No more masters. No more slaves. Just beings, trying to share a galaxy." Velthron laughed bitterly. "You think it will be that simple? Species that have been enemies for millennia, suddenly living in peace? The Dominion's order prevented wars that would have devastated entire sectors. Maybe, but it was order built on suffering, order maintained by fear. We'll take our chances with freedom." Zara stepped closer. "You asked Captain Chen why we fought. I'll tell you something he didn't. We didn't just fight because we wanted to be free. We fought because we couldn't stand by while others suffered. Humans have a saying, 'Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.' We couldn't be truly free while others remained enslaved." She offered her hand to help him rise, a gesture of respect that surprised him. "The war is over. Now comes the harder part, building something better than what we destroyed. You can be part of that, if you choose. Or you can spend the rest of your life as a prisoner. The choice is yours." Velthron stared at her hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, he took it. The Galactic Compact was formally established 6 months later. Representatives from 38 species gathered on Earth, the world that had sparked the revolution, to sign an agreement that would govern the galaxy's future. There would be no rankings, no classifications, no masters and no slaves. Each species would be equal, with representation based on population and contribution to the common good. It would not be easy. There were old grudges to settle, old wounds to heal, old hatreds that would take generations to fade. Some species struggled with freedom after lives of servitude. Some former Dominion officials refused to accept the new order. There were conflicts and setbacks and moments when the whole project seemed ready to collapse, but it held. Slowly, imperfectly, the galaxy began to change. General Yuki Tanaka did not live to see the full transformation. She died peacefully in her sleep 5 years after the final battle. At the age of 75, her final words, recorded for posterity, became the motto of the new compact. "We did not fight for victory. We fought for hope. And hope, once kindled, cannot be extinguished." A century later, the compact's historians studied the human Velthrani war with fascination. They analyzed battles and strategies, interviewed survivors, examined the decisions that had changed the course of history. They tried to understand how a species with no psychic powers, no natural advantages, no special gifts, had managed to defeat an empire that had ruled for 50,000 years. They never found a satisfying answer. Some pointed to human adaptability, their ability to learn and improvise faster than any other species. Some emphasized their psychological resilience, their refusal to accept defeat, even when defeat was logical. Some focused on their social cohesion, the way they could unite against common threats despite their internal conflicts. But the humans themselves had a simpler explanation. In the museum built on the site of the first Velthrani landing in New York, there was a plaque that contained the words Captain Marcus Chen had spoken before the final battle. Visitors from across the galaxy came to read it, trying to understand the species that had changed everything. The plaque said, "They measured us by the wrong metrics. We are not powerful because of what we have. We are powerful because of what we are. We are survivors. We have faced extinction 100 times, and we are still here. We fight not because we expect to win, but because fighting is who we are. It is in our blood, our bones, our souls, and we never, ever stop." Below the plaque was a simple image, a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, the world the Velthrani had dismissed as insignificant, the world that had changed the galaxy, Earth, home of the weak species that turned out to be the strongest of all, not because of their bodies or their technology or their psychic abilities, because of their hearts, and that was something no classification system would ever be able to measure.